Unlock the enigmatic world of the Arnault family, the unstoppable force behind LVMH, the globe's leading luxury empire that redefined elegance and excess. In this video, we pull back the curtain on Bernard Arnault, France's most powerful tycoon, and the dynasty he built from modest roots into a sprawling kingdom of fashion, fine wines, and timeless treasures. Discover how a young engineer with a knack for spotting opportunities turned a family business into a luxury powerhouse, scooping up legends like Christian Dior, Louis Vuitton, and Tiffany Co through daring moves that shook the industry. From his early days blending discipline and creativity, Bernard crafted a path of bold acquisitions and strategic pivots, merging icons to create LVMH and dominating markets worldwide. But the real intrigue lies in the family. 2 marriages producing 5 heirs now woven into the fabric of the company, holding key roles that spark whispers of a real-life succession drama. Watch as Delphine steers Dior's creative vision, Antoine shapes the group's image, Alexandre bridges celebrity worlds at Tiffany, Frédéric innovates in watches, and Jean pushes boundaries at Vuitton, all under Bernard's watchful eye, with a family holding structure ensuring their grip lasts generations. Yet shadows loom. Espionage scandals involving shadowy intelligence ties, money laundering whispers with international figures, political controversies around global causes, and labor storms from factory floors to executive halls. Amid lavish yachts, private jets, and art collections, their philanthropy often faces scrutiny as polished PR, while France's social divides highlight the cost of such power. Join us as we expose the ambitions, rivalries, and secrets fueling this luxury legend. From boardroom battles to cultural pursuits masking tensions, this is the untold story of a family where fortune meets fierce determination. Hit subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts. Could you handle the Arnault throne? Overview of the Arnault family. The Arnault family, under the leadership of Bernard Jean-Étienne Arnault, represents one of the most influential dynasties in the global luxury goods industry. This family has not only amassed immense wealth, but also demonstrated the enduring power of perseverance, sharp business acumen, and strong familial traditions. Their combined net worth is estimated at approximately $149 billion as of May 2025, or $155 billion, according to certain alternative indices. Through their efforts, they have constructed a vast empire that profoundly impacts the worlds of fashion, wine, and high-end consumer products on an international scale. Bernard Arnault was born on March 5, 1949, in Roubaix, France, into a deeply religious Catholic family. His father, Jean-Léon Arnault, was the owner of the civil engineering company Savinel, which specialized in construction and infrastructure projects. His mother, Marie-Joseph Savinel, was a talented pianist who harbored a particular passion for the Dior brand, infusing the household with an appreciation for artistry and elegance. Growing up in this environment, Bernard was exposed to a blend of discipline from his father's business-oriented world and creativity from his mother's musical pursuits. This dual influence played a crucial role in shaping his character, fostering a mindset that combined rigorous analytical thinking with an eye for aesthetic and cultural value. These early experiences laid the foundation for his future successes, teaching him the importance of hard work, strategic planning, and an appreciation for refined tastes. After completing his education, Bernard graduated with an engineering degree from the renowned École Polytechnique in 1971. This institution, known for its elite status and rigorous curriculum, equipped him with advanced technical skills and a problem-solving approach that would prove invaluable in his career. Upon graduation, he joined his father's company, Ferret Savenel, where he initially contributed to its operations in civil engineering. However, Bernard's vision extended beyond the traditional scope of the business. He spearheaded a significant pivot toward real estate development, recognizing the potential for higher profits and growth in property markets during that era. Under his guidance, the company was renamed Farinel and later evolved into the George V Group, reflecting its expanded focus on upscale real estate ventures. By the early 1980s, Bernard made the bold decision to divest all of the company's assets, liquidating holdings to generate capital. This move was not merely a financial transaction, but a strategic repositioning, allowing him to redirect resources toward more ambitious opportunities in emerging sectors. The true explosion in Bernard Arnault's career came in 1984, when he acquired the bankrupt conglomerate Boussac Saint-Frère for a nominal fee of just 1 French franc. This acquisition was a masterstroke of opportunism, as the conglomerate included the iconic Christian Dior brand, which was struggling but held immense potential in the luxury space. However, the deal also brought controversy. To streamline operations and focus on the profitable luxury elements, Arnault implemented drastic measures, including the dismissal of around 9,000 employees and the rapid sale of non-luxury divisions, such as textiles and other industrial assets. These actions earned him the nickname the Terminator, a label that highlighted his ruthless efficiency in cutting costs and reallocating resources. Critics viewed this as harsh, but from a business perspective, it was a calculated risk that paid off handsomely. By shedding unprofitable parts, he secured the funding needed to revitalize Dior, transforming it from a faltering entity into a cornerstone of his expanding portfolio. This acquisition marked the beginning of his dominance in luxury, illustrating how decisive leadership can turn adversity into opportunity and lay the groundwork for a multinational empire. On the personal front, Bernard Arnault's life has been marked by 2 marriages that have shaped his family dynamics. His first marriage was to Anne de Wavrin, lasting from 1973 until their divorce in 1990. Together they had 2 children, Delphine, born in 1975, and Antoine, born in 1977. These early years of family life coincided with the initial phases of his business career, providing a stable foundation amid his professional ambitions. In 1991, Arnault married Hélène Mercier, an accomplished Canadian concert pianist, whose artistic background echoed his mother's influence. This union produced 3 sons, Alexandre in 1992, Frédéric in 1995, and Jean in 1998. The blending of these families has created a cohesive unit where professional and personal spheres intertwine seamlessly. What stands out is the active involvement of all 5 children in high-level positions within LVMH, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, the world's premier luxury goods conglomerate. Founded by Bernard in 1987 through the strategic merger of Louis Vuitton, a leader in leather goods and fashion, and Moet Hennessy, renowned for its champagnes and spirits, LVMH has grown into a behemoth under his stewardship. Delving deeper into the roles of each child reveals how they form the backbone of the family's future leadership. Delphine Arnault, the eldest daughter, has risen to prominence as the CEO and chair of Christian Dior since 2023. Her journey to this position spanned over a decade as executive vice president at Louis Vuitton, where she honed her skills in brand management, product innovation, and global expansion. Delphine embodies sophistication and a keen marketing strategy, often credited with modernizing Dior's image while preserving its heritage. She oversees collections, retail strategies, and partnerships that keep the brand at the forefront of haute couture and ready-to-wear fashion. Her leadership style emphasizes collaboration with designers and a deep understanding of consumer trends, ensuring Dior remains synonymous with timeless elegance. Antoine Arnault, the eldest son, holds a pivotal role in overseeing communications and image for the entire LVMH group, while also serving as CEO of Berluti, a prestigious brand specializing in high-end men's shoes, leather goods, and apparel. In his communications capacity, Antoine manages public relations, advertising campaigns, and brand storytelling across LVMH's diverse portfolio. His expertise in crafting global brand narratives has been instrumental in enhancing LVMH's reputation as a leader in luxury. At Berluti, he focuses on artisanal craftsmanship, expanding the brand's presence in emerging markets and introducing innovative products like custom patina shoes. Antoine's approach blends traditional techniques with contemporary marketing, making Berluti a symbol of masculine luxury. Alexandre Arnault, the third child and first son from the second marriage, is set to assume the position of Deputy CEO at Moet Hennessy, effective February 2025. Prior to this, he served as Executive Vice President at Tiffany Co, where he played a key role in the brand's restructuring following its acquisition by LVMH in 2021. Alexandre's contributions included integrating Tiffany into the LVMH ecosystem, revamping its jewelry lines, and leveraging digital platforms for sales. His forward-thinking mindset has emphasized sustainability and technological integration in luxury wines and spirits at Moet Hennessy, overseeing brands like Dom Pérignon and Hennessy Cognac. This role positions him to influence production, distribution, and innovation in the beverages sector. Frédéric Arnault leads LVMH watches, managing an array of esteemed brands including Tag Heuer, Hublot, and Zenith. His responsibilities encompass strategic direction, product development, and market positioning for these timepiece makers. Frédéric's focus on technological advancements, such as smartwatch integrations and precision engineering, has driven growth in a competitive market. He balances heritage watchmaking with modern features, ensuring brands like Tag Heuer appeal to sports enthusiasts while Hublot targets avant-garde collectors. His leadership has fostered collaborations with influencers and events, expanding the division's global footprint. Jean Arnault, the youngest son, serves as Director of Marketing and Product Development for Louis Vuitton watches. In this capacity, he concentrates on merging traditional craftsmanship with contemporary design elements, creating timepieces that reflect Vuitton's travel heritage. Jean's work involves market research, campaign planning, and innovation in materials and aesthetics. He aims to position Vuitton watches as essential accessories for the discerning traveler, incorporating features like customizable straps and limited editions. Additionally, the family extends its influence through Bernard's niece, Stéphanie Watine Arnault, who occupies significant positions within various LVMH brands. Her involvement helps broaden the network, bringing fresh perspectives to operations and strategy. LVMH itself manages over 75 iconic brands, spanning multiple categories. Sephora dominates in cosmetics and beauty retail, offering a wide array of products and experiential shopping. Fendi excels in fashion, known for its fur and leather innovations under creative directors. Bulgari specializes in jewelry and watches, blending Italian flair with precious gems. The 2021 acquisition of Tiffany Co. for $15.8 billion stands as the largest luxury deal in history, adding a jewel in the crown with its blue box allure and diamond expertise. LVMH's market capitalization has exceeded 300 billion euros in recent years, underscoring the economic powerhouse controlled by the Arnauts. This valuation reflects robust revenues from diverse sources, resilient supply chains, and a global retail network that includes flagship stores in major cities. To safeguard their legacy, the family's assets are structured through the holding company Agache, which was reorganized in 2022 into a limited partnership format. This setup ensures long-term control, with each of Bernard's 5 children holding equal shares in Agache Commandite, the managing entity. A key provision prohibits the sale of shares for 30 years without unanimous consent from all stakeholders. Consequently, the family maintains 48% ownership and 64% voting rights in LVMH, forming a formidable barrier against external takeovers or dilutions of power. This arrangement is more than a financial mechanism. It promotes unity, discourages internal conflicts, and guarantees that decision-making remains within the family. By locking in shares, it prevents short-term temptations and fosters a commitment to multi-generational stewardship, aligning with Bernard's vision of enduring dominance. Beyond the core luxury domain, the Arnault family has diversified into other sectors to mitigate risks and explore new growth avenues. Through Aglaé Ventures, they invest in technology companies such as Netflix, a streaming giant revolutionizing entertainment, and ByteDance, the parent of TikTok, tapping into digital media and social platforms. These investments reflect a savvy understanding of how tech intersects with consumer behavior, potentially enhancing LVMH's marketing and e-commerce strategies. In sports, they hold a majority stake in Paris FC, a football club that achieved promotion to Ligue 1 in 2025, boosting its profile and community engagement. This venture not only diversifies assets but also builds brand affinity through sponsorships and events. Furthermore, their involvement in yachting via Princess Yachts involves manufacturing and sales of luxury vessels, catering to ultra-high net worth individuals and aligning with the opulent lifestyle promoted by LVMH brands. These expansions demonstrate a broad vision, unbound by a single industry, and position the family as versatile investors capable of adapting to economic shifts. Nevertheless, 2025 has proven challenging for the Arnauts. Bernard lost his title as France's richest individual to the heirs of the Hermès family, with his personal fortune declining by about $24 billion. This setback stems from LVMH's performance amid economic headwinds, particularly a slowdown in China, a key market for luxury goods, coupled with broader stagnation in the sector. Factors like reduced consumer spending, geopolitical tensions, and shifting preferences toward experiential luxuries have impacted sales across fashion, jewelry, and wines. Despite these hurdles, Bernard remains a prominent cultural philanthropist. He donated 200 million euros to the restoration of Notre Dame Cathedral, which reopened in 2024 after the devastating 2019 fire, contributing to the preservation of French heritage. Additionally, he supported the 2024 Paris Olympics, likely through sponsorships and initiatives that highlighted LVMH brands during the global event. The Arnault family is also renowned for their passion for classical arts. Bernard himself plays the piano, a hobby that connects him to his mother's legacy and provides a creative outlet amid business pressures. His children share this musical inclination, with several being accomplished musicians in their own right. This artistic side creates an intriguing contrast with their aggressive business tactics, where competition and strategic maneuvering are commonplace. The family's dynamics have often been likened to the HBO series Succession due to internal rivalries, intricate succession planning, and the high-stakes environment of power transitions. Such comparisons highlight the blend of familial loyalty and professional ambition that drives them. At 76 years old, Bernard Arnault shows no signs of retiring, continuing to steer LVMH with unwavering energy. However, the established family structure ensures seamless continuity across generations. This setup not only fuels speculation about who will ultimately succeed him, perhaps one of the children or a collective leadership, but also underscores that the Arnault empire transcends mere wealth. It encompasses a rich legacy of innovation, cultural patronage, and unbreakable family bonds. Reflecting on Bernard's journey from modest beginnings in Roubaix to global tycoon prompts consideration of how determination and vision can forge a living legend. How Bernard Arnault stole LVMH from its founding family's building on the captivating saga of the Arnault family's ascent in the luxury realm that we've been unraveling. Their humble beginnings, the engineering background that fueled Bernard's strategic mind, the involvement of his children in key roles, the diversification into tech and sports, and even those recent setbacks in 2025. Now let's zero in on one of the most explosive and debated episodes in Bernard Arnault's professional journey. This is the story of how he effectively wrested control of LVMH from its founding families, a maneuver frequently labeled as a hostile coup d'etat in the boardroom. It's a narrative brimming with cunning tactics, deep-seated family conflicts, and high-wire risks that didn't just alter a company but redefined an entire sector. Envision a figure who began his path with blueprints and calculations in civil engineering, evolving into a virtuoso of corporate chess, deploying every conceivable strategy to construct a colossal domain. Yet, this chapter transcends mere triumph. It's interwoven with heated disputes, charges of predatory behavior, and profound inquiries into the sacrifices made when raw ambition eclipses long-standing customs. I'll guide you through this saga methodically, maintaining an authentic and captivating tone, as this isn't a stale recounting of facts. It's the sort of riveting intrigue that could inspire a gripping cinematic thriller, complete with twists, power plays, and lasting repercussions. Let's start at the genesis of this controversial arc tracing back to 1984, a pivotal year when Bernard Arnault identified a golden chance amid the ruins of the Boussac-Sanfrère conglomerate. This once mighty entity was teetering on the brink of collapse, engulfed in bankruptcy proceedings that exposed its vulnerabilities for all to see. Nestled within this chaotic assortment of assets was Christian Dior, a legendary name in fashion that, despite its prestige, was dimmed by the conglomerate's overall woes, a diamond in the rough, if you will, awaiting someone with the vision to restore its luster. Arnault, ever the opportunist sharpened by his real estate ventures, didn't waver for a moment. He marshaled resources with precision, drawing $15 million directly from his family's construction enterprise, the very Ferret-Savenel company he had astutely reoriented from civil engineering toward lucrative property development. To bolster this, he forged an alliance with Lazard Bank, a financial powerhouse known for its expertise in complex deals, securing additional funding that brought the total investment to $80 million. On the surface, this could appear as a routine acquisition, a savvy businessman snapping up a distressed asset at a favorable price. However, the reality was far more layered and contentious. To transform this purchase into a viable springboard, Arnault had to execute a drastic restructuring, shedding what he deemed excess baggage with unflinching resolve. This meant terminating the employment of approximately 9,000 workers, a decision that sent shock waves through communities and labor circles, and divesting all non-luxury components of the business, from textiles to industrial operations, channeling the proceeds back into fortifying the core luxury elements. It was this unyielding approach that first branded him the Terminator, a moniker that evoked images of a relentless force dismantling obstacles without remorse. While critics decried the human toll, the shattered livelihoods, the economic ripple effects in French towns, Arnault's defenders argued it was a necessary purge to inject vitality into Dior. Ultimately, this wasn't merely a rescue mission for a single brand. It established a precedent, demonstrating Arnault's readiness to embrace difficult, unpopular choices that others might avoid, all in service of a grander vision that would propel him toward even loftier conquests. Advancing the timeline to 1989, the plot thickens dramatically, entering a phase of heightened intrigue and corporate warfare. At this juncture, LVMH had freshly emerged from the union of two storied entities, Louis Vuitton, synonymous with exquisite leather goods and travel accessories, and Moet Hennessy, a titan in fine wines and spirits. This merger was intended to create a synergistic powerhouse, but from its inception, fissures were evident, threatening to undermine the whole structure. The founding families, the Vuitton lineage, guardians of a heritage dating back to the 19th century, and the Hennessy clan, steeped in centuries of distilling expertise, found themselves locked in bitter contention, clashing over governance, strategic priorities, and the allocation of influence within the new conglomerate. These internal frictions created an atmosphere ripe for external intervention, and that's precisely where Arnault positioned himself. He was ostensibly invited aboard as a neutral mediator, tasked with arbitrating disputes and fostering harmony among the warring parties. It seemed like a benign role, one that might involve diplomatic negotiations and compromise. But in truth, Arnault was orchestrating a far more ambitious scheme from the shadows, employing a veil of secrecy through offshore entities and subsidiary companies, mechanisms designed to obscure ownership trails and evade premature detection. He began methodically acquiring shares in LVMH. His commitment was staggering, an upfront infusion of $1.6 billion from personal and corporate resources, supplemented by $600 million in borrowed capital, which amplified his leverage and intensified the assault on the company's vulnerabilities. Like a seasoned tactician, he capitalized on the family schisms with expert finesse, amplifying minor disagreements into major chasms that served his agenda. Disagreements over expansion plans, brand autonomy, or profit distribution became wedges he drove deeper, fragmenting unity and paving the way for his ascendancy. In a remarkably short span, he had consolidated sufficient equity to claim the chairman's seat, effectively relegating the original proprietors to peripheral roles or ousting them altogether. The subsequent transformations were swift and familiar, sweeping layoffs aimed at reducing overheads and enhancing efficiency, coupled with the liquidation of underperforming assets to hone the focus on high-margin luxury segments. This mirrored his Boussac strategy to an uncanny degree, scouting for soft spots, launching a decisive strike, and reconstructing the entity according to his blueprint, prioritizing agility and profitability over sentiment or legacy preservation. What makes this episode particularly emblematic is that it wasn't an anomaly in Arnault's repertoire. Rather, it evolved into his hallmark methodology, a repeatable formula for empire building. He developed an acute sense for detecting family-owned luxury houses, teetering due to intramural conflicts, descending upon them with the precision of a predator sensing frailty. Consider the protracted skirmish with Hermès, spanning from 2002 to 2010, as a prime illustration of this modus operandi in action. In this instance, Arnault pursued a clandestine campaign to infiltrate and dominate the revered scarf and handbag maker, renowned for its unyielding independence. He utilized equity swaps, sophisticated financial derivatives that permit the gradual accrual of economic interest in a company without triggering immediate disclosure obligations or alerting regulators and shareholders. Through this veiled technique, he stealthily built a substantial 23% stake, inching closer to a controlling position without fanfare. Yet, the Hermès family, fiercely protective of their autonomy, mounted a vigorous counteroffensive, initiating a barrage of legal challenges that exposed the maneuver and ignited a protracted courtroom saga. The disputes revolved around transparency, fiduciary duties, and the ethics of such surreptitious accumulations, dragging on for years and consuming vast resources. Ultimately, Arnault conceded defeat, compelled to unwind his position in 2014, marking one of the few instances where his aggression met insurmountable resistance. This setback, though infrequent, underscored the ferocity of his methods and the lengths to which adversaries would go to thwart him. Undeterred, he pivoted to other prey. In 2001, with Fendi, the Italian fashion house celebrated for its furs and accessories, Arnault engineered a transaction laden with debt obligations and uncompromising negotiations, systematically eroding the resolve of the inheriting family members until they acquiesced, integrating the brand seamlessly into LVMH's portfolio. Similarly, the 2011 acquisition of Bulgari, the Roman jeweler famed for its bold designs and gemstones, followed a parallel script, harnessing debt as a tool to heighten financial strain and engaging in relentless bargaining that chipped away at the owner's defenses, ultimately securing the prize. These weren't amicable mergers sealed with mutual respect. They were meticulously orchestrated campaigns that frequently left the displaced families nursing grievances of being outfoxed and overridden, their ancestral enterprises subsumed into a larger machine. The chorus of disapproval surrounding this methodology is vociferous and multifaceted, with detractors lambasting it as inherently predatory, contending that it rends the intricate tapestry of these venerable enterprises. They assert that Arnault's playbook elevates impersonal investor yields, those quarterly dividends and stock appreciations demanded by shareholders, above the cherished artisanal legacies that originally elevated these brands to iconic status. Ponder this for a moment. The essence of luxury extends beyond mere commodities. It encompasses meticulous craftsmanship passed down through generations, historical narratives woven into every stitch or seam, and the dedicated artisans who embody that ethos. However, in Arnault's regime, operational efficiencies have often dictated the relocation of manufacturing to more cost-effective regions such as Italy for leatherwork or Asia for assembly lines, thereby diminishing employment opportunities in France, the cradle of many of these marks. Post-acquisition, LVMH's French-based staff has contracted markedly, with production facilities migrated abroad to inflate profit margins and compete in a globalized economy. This isn't solely a matter of statistics on employment roles. It's an erosion of the quintessential Gallic flair, the atelier traditions, the savoir-faire that distinguished entities like Dior or Vuitton from mass market fare. Opponents highlight how such strategies eviscerate the spirit of family enterprises, converting them from independent bastions of creativity into interchangeable components within a sprawling conglomerate, where corporate synergies trump individual character. Nevertheless, the empirical outcomes are indisputable. By 2021, LVMH had swelled into a behemoth valued at 313 billion euros, asserting unrivaled supremacy in the worldwide luxury arena, its revenue soaring from diversified holdings and streamlined operations. The epithet, the wolf in cashmere, encapsulates Arnault's duality with poetic accuracy, a veneer of refined elegance concealing a voracious contender. This persona arises directly from his adeptness at pinpointing and leveraging frailties in luxury dynasties, such as those festering internal divisions that render them susceptible to incursion. It's a blueprint that has propelled his conglomerate to unprecedented heights, but the inquiry persists. At what expense to ethics, heritage, and human elements? The enduring debates cast Arnault as a paradoxical figure, ingenious in his acumen, yet unforgiving in his quest for hegemony, leaving an indelible mark on the industry he revolutionized. Espionage scandals and abuse of power to protect the empire. In the shadowy corridors of global luxury and influence, the story of Bernard Arnault and his vast empire, LVMH, unfolds as a tale of espionage scandals and calculated abuses of power. This narrative reveals how one of the world's wealthiest individuals has navigated treacherous waters to safeguard his dominance, blending corporate strategy with tactics that blur the lines between business and state secrets. At its core, it's a chronicle of ambition unchecked, where protecting an empire means wielding influence in ways that challenge ethics, transparency, and the rule of law. The saga reached a dramatic peak in 2024 when Bernard Arnault, the visionary behind LVMH, the conglomerate that owns iconic brands like Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Moet and Chandon, found himself at the center of a high-stakes espionage scandal that sent shock waves through France's elite circles. The key figure in this drama was Bernard Squarcini, a former director of France's Direction Centrale du Renseignement Intérieur, or DCRI, the nation's premier domestic intelligence agency. Tasked with combating terrorism, espionage, and threats to national security during his tenure, Squarcini brought unparalleled expertise to the table. In 2013, LVMH hired him as a security consultant, offering a generous compensation package that included a substantial salary and benefits far exceeding typical advisory roles. This move raised immediate questions. What services could justify such lavish pay, and how might Squarcini's deep ties to government intelligence benefit a private luxury giant? The scandal erupted when Squarcini faced serious charges for misusing the very state intelligence systems he once oversaw. Prosecutors alleged he exploited these powerful tools, designed for protecting the nation, to conduct surveillance on behalf of LVMH. Targets included business rivals attempting to erode the company's market dominance in the fiercely competitive luxury sector, investigative journalists digging into LVMH's operations and Arnault's personal dealings, and even independent filmmakers whose projects threatened to unveil unflattering truths. A particularly notable case involved a documentary titled Secrets of the Arnault Family, which aimed to explore the private lives and business practices of Arnault's inner circle. Squarcini reportedly went to extraordinary lengths to derail this production, using his networks to gather intelligence, intimidate participants, and prevent the film from advancing beyond its early stages. Throughout the ordeal, Arnault maintained a composed demeanor, publicly asserting that he was completely unaware of Squarcini's actions. He portrayed himself as a hands-off leader, immersed in strategic oversight rather than day-to-day security matters. However, courtroom evidence painted a different picture. It revealed that Squarcini had compiled unauthorized dossiers, detailed files containing sensitive personal information on various individuals. These files were not mere background checks. They involved tracking movements, communications, and intentions, often drawing on classified data inaccessible to civilians. In one instance, Squarcini allegedly pinpointed a specific film director, deploying resources to block funding, distribution channels, and even public awareness of the project, ensuring that any narrative critical of Arnault remained buried. This wasn't isolated overreach. It represented a deliberate fusion of corporate interests with state-level espionage capabilities. Squarcini had leveraged his former colleagues and lingering access to intelligence networks, crossing ethical and legal boundaries that separate legitimate business security from invasive government-backed spying. Investigations into these activities began quietly in 2013, shortly after Squarcini's hiring, but they simmered beneath the surface for years. It wasn't until the high-profile trials in 2024 that the full extent emerged, exposing LVMH as a state within a state, a self-contained powerhouse operating with its own playbook, extending influence into governmental realms. This perception was amplified by Arnault's well-documented connections to France's political elite, including President Emmanuel Macron. Arnault had been a vocal supporter during Macron's 2017 election campaign, providing not just endorsements but also strategic alliances that hinted at deeper sway. Such ties suggested the potential for influencing policy decisions, delaying investigations, or redirecting scrutiny, all in service of preserving the empire's untouchable status. Yet this 2024 espionage affair was no anomaly. It echoed a pattern of controversy stretching back decades, illustrating Arnault's readiness to engage in unorthodox methods to defend his interests beyond conventional boardroom battles. Rewind to the 1990s, and we encounter the notorious Karachi affair, a sprawling scandal that intertwined French politics, international arms sales, and covert financial schemes. At its heart were allegations of kickbacks related to a multi-billion euro deal for French submarines sold to Pakistan. Arnault came under scrutiny for potential involvement in these illegal payments, which investigators believed were channeled through networks linked to LVMH's lobbying efforts. The theory posited that such funds could have been used to secure favorable business conditions, tax advantages, or regulatory leniency from French officials. Arnault vehemently denied any participation, dismissing the accusations as unfounded and emphasizing his distance from the affair. Nevertheless, the investigation underscored how his empire could become entangled in global intrigue, where vast wealth intersects with hidden political agendas across borders and governments. It offered a window into a magnate adept at maneuvering through opaque territories, even at the risk of association with scandals that implicated high-level corruption and international diplomacy. Fast forward to more recent times, and another layer of scrutiny emerged in 2023, with investigations into possible money laundering tied to Arnault's interactions with Russian businessman Nikolai Sarkisov. The focal point was a 20 million euro loan facilitated for the purchase of a lavish property in Courchevel, the exclusive French alpine ski resort favored by the world's ultra-wealthy for its opulent chalets and pristine slopes. Arnault rejected the claims as absurd, insisting on the transaction's legitimacy and transparency. However, the timing intensified suspicions. It occurred amid stringent European Union sanctions against Russia, imposed in response to geopolitical tensions and the invasion of Ukraine. These restrictions aimed to sever financial ties with Russian entities, making any high-value deals involving Russian nationals subject to intense review. Probes delved into the transaction structure, questioning whether proper disclosures were made and if the fund's origins complied with the international laws. Beyond the specifics, this episode highlighted Arnault's expansive network, which seemingly enabled him to execute complex deals under challenging circumstances, potentially skirting perceptions of impropriety to bolster or expand his assets during turbulent global events. Binding these incidents is a recurring strategy, deploying unconventional, often aggressive tactics to insulate the empire from threats, be they regulatory, reputational, or public. Consider the 2022 controversy surrounding LVMH's private jets, which drew widespread attention when social media activists and environmental trackers began monitoring flight paths. Using publicly available data, they calculated staggering carbon emissions, spotlighting what critics viewed as corporate hypocrisy in an era of urgent climate action. Online platforms buzzed with outrage, amplifying calls for sustainability from a company profiting from luxury consumption. Rather than committing to substantive reforms like investing in greener aviation or offsetting emissions transparently, LVMH opted for a pragmatic pivot, selling the jets outright and shifting to a rental model for future travel needs. This maneuver wasn't driven by environmental enlightenment. It effectively eliminated traceable digital footprints, shielding Arnault's movements from further public dissection and averting ongoing media scrutiny. It exemplified a willingness to invest significant resources in secrecy, even if it fueled narratives of evasion. Tax evasion strategies and citizenship maneuvers, safeguarding wealth. The drama begins prominently in 2012, a pivotal year when France was still reeling from the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis, facing high unemployment, sluggish growth, and mounting public debt. President François Hollande, who had just swept into office on a wave of socialist promises to redistribute wealth and restore economic balance, unveiled a controversial measure, a 75% wealth tax targeted at annual income surpassing 1 million euros. Dubbed the super tax, this policy was positioned as an essential tool to combat widening inequality, channeling funds into vital social programs, healthcare initiatives, and deficit reduction during the fragile Eurozone recovery. For the average citizen struggling with rising living costs and job insecurity, it symbolized a long overdue push for equity in a nation where the gap between the haves and have-nots was growing starkly visible. However, for Bernard Arnault, France's wealthiest citizen at the time, boasting a net worth of approximately $41 billion, and steering LVMH, the sprawling luxury conglomerate that encompasses legendary brands such as Louis Vuitton for timeless handbags and luggage, Dior for haute couture, elegance, Moet and Chandon for effervescent champagnes, and over 70 other prestigious labels. It represented an existential challenge to his meticulously built fortune. Instead of merely lobbying against it through industry channels or public statements, Arnault made a bold and highly symbolic move. He submitted an application for Belgian citizenship. Belgium, with its comparatively gentle tax landscape featuring reduced rates on personal wealth, capital gains, and inheritances, often as low as 3% to 7% for family transfers, compared to France's steeper brackets, emerged as a tempting refuge, potentially insulating his assets from the intensifying fiscal pressures back home and allowing him to maintain his European base without the full weight of French levies. The public backlash erupted almost immediately, casting Arnault as the epitome of elite detachment and igniting a firestorm that dominated headlines and dinner table discussions across France. Newspapers unleashed a barrage of criticism, with the progressive outlet Libération leading the charge by plastering its front page with the provocative and unfiltered headline, "Get lost, rich jerk." This stark phrase encapsulated the widespread feeling of betrayal, framing Arnault not as a national success story but as a greedy opportunist, willing to forsake his country during its hour of need. Politicians from left-wing firebrands to right-leaning moderates joined the chorus, decrying his actions as blatant tax avoidance and a stark illustration of how the super-rich could effortlessly uproot and evade responsibilities that ordinary workers bore without choice. The controversy sparked a nationwide dialogue on economic patriotism, probing whether billionaires who often profited from France's skilled workforce, cultural cachet, and infrastructure owed a moral duty to stay and contribute proportionally rather than fleeing to tax havens that offered sweeter deals. Arnault, whose LVMH empire provided jobs to tens of thousands in France, from artisans in Parisian ateliers to factory workers in rural regions, and drew immense value from the country's reputation as the cradle of luxury and fashion, mounted a robust defense. He maintained that the citizenship bid was unrelated to tax dodging, vowing to fulfill all his French fiscal duties regardless, and presenting it as a pragmatic step rooted in established business links to Belgium and personal family planning. Despite these assurances, doubt lingered. Street protests materialized with demonstrators waving signs mocking his wealth. Satirical cartoons and magazines showed him sprinting across the border with overflowing bags of euros. And the saga gained traction when other high-profile figures, like actor Gérard Depardieu, who had already decamped to Belgium for similar reasons, fueled perceptions of a mass exodus among the privileged class. The episode resonated beyond France's borders, drawing commentary from European leaders and economists who pondered if such migrations eroded the social fabric of the continent, weakening collective efforts to rebuild post-crisis economies. By 2013, under relentless media glare and political heat, Arnault reversed course, formally withdrawing his Belgian citizenship application in a move that many saw as a calculated retreat to salvage his image. He characterized the whole affair as a regrettable misunderstanding, doubling down on his explanation that it was designed purely to safeguard a family foundation. An intricate legal structure aimed at ensuring smooth asset transitions to his heirs, supporting charitable causes, and preserving his legacy for future generations. This pivot was spun as a reaffirmation of his devotion to France, but it failed to fully extinguish the investigative flames. Authorities and journalists pressed on, unraveling the complexities of Arnault's financial empire and exposing facets that only heightened suspicions of deeper tax minimization schemes. Scrutiny revealed over $1.6 billion in assets parked in Luxembourg, the diminutive European duchy infamous as a magnet for the world's affluent due to its opaque banking secrecy, minimal oversight, and investor-friendly policies that have long made it a cornerstone of international wealth management. These weren't just standard investments. Links surfaced to a network of offshore entities overseeing lavish possessions, including his fleet of superyachts, extravagant floating mansions like the 101-meter Symphony, registered under flags of convenience in places such as the Cayman Islands to sidestep hefty value-added taxes, VAT, and import duties, and elite London properties, multi-million-pound residences in upscale neighborhoods like Mayfair or Kensington, layered through anonymous companies to conceal true ownership and diminish exposure to Britain's stamp duty land tax or French inheritance claims. To understand Luxembourg's allure, picture it as a fortified financial bunker. Its regulations permit generous deferrals on taxes for intellectual property rights, royalties from brands, and investment returns, allowing capital to accumulate largely untouched by the higher rates imposed in countries like France, where corporate and personal taxes can climb to 45% or more. Arnault's configurations, reportedly funneled through family-controlled vehicles such as Pill Invest, directed funds through these conduits, effectively placing them out of immediate reach for French tax collectors while still enabling global operations. These offshore arrangements, which might incorporate jurisdictions like the British Virgin Islands or Bermuda, spots highlighted in major exposés such as the Paradise Papers, for their role in global tax avoidance, function to anonymize holdings, streamline international transfers, and dramatically cut liabilities on everything, from capital gains during asset sales to estate planning for vast inheritances. For Arnault, this setup transcended simple penny pinching. It constituted a formidable barrier against erosive taxes that could chip away at his empire's growth, including potential hits from inheritance duties that might claim up to 45% of fortunes passed down. Opponents decried it as archetypal tax avoidance, adhering to the letter of the law, but flouting its spirit, especially jarring in a France enforcing austerity measures like pension reforms and public spending cuts that disproportionately affected the working and middle classes, forcing them to shoulder more through increased VAT or reduced benefits amid lingering economic hardship. Moving forward to 2024, the narrative intensified with a shocking data breach that thrust Arnault's tax filings into the public domain, stripping away layers of privacy and sparking renewed indignation across social media and news outlets. Whether the result of sophisticated cyber attacks or insider leaks, the precise source shrouded in mystery and speculation, the disclosure leaked intricate details of his declarations, including income streams, deductions, and asset valuations that painted a picture of optimized efficiency. In a rapid response, Arnault's advisors lobbied for the records to be classified under national secret protections, arguing that their exposure risked harming France's economic edge by revealing proprietary business insights to competitors. Yet this maneuver backfired, amplifying charges of elite favoritism and suggesting that his close relationships with the influential figures allowed him to bend bureaucratic rules for personal gain. Questions swirled. What further intricacies were being concealed? Why the urgency for such extraordinary shielding? The incident laid bare a glaring double standard where billionaires could seemingly invoke national security to dodge transparency, while average citizens endured invasive audits over minor errors like unreported freelance income or overlooked receipts. It mirrored earlier mishaps, such as the British government's accidental release of Arnault's private email during a high-profile investment conference, underscoring the precariousness of managing sensitive data for the ultra-wealthy in an increasingly digital world. Peering beneath the surface, these events aren't disconnected anomalies, but integral components of a meticulously engineered tax optimization framework masterminded by Arnault at LVMH. The conglomerate thrives by navigating crevices in multinational tax codes, particularly via intragroup transactions that shuttle profits to jurisdictions with feather-light burdens. Imagine the life cycle of a signature product, a handbag sketched by designers in a sunlit Paris studio, assembled with premium leathers sourced from Italian tanneries, but with sales revenues booked through affiliates in the Netherlands or Ireland, where corporate tax rates dip as low as 12.5% or even lower through special arrangements. This approach safeguards billions each year for LVMH, with analyses suggesting hundreds of millions in preserved funds through these compliant yet assertive strategies that reroute earnings before they hit higher tax shores. For instance, in 2023, LVMH disbursed 8.1 billion euros in French taxes, a notable 50% jump from 2019. Yet experts from bodies like the EU Tax Observatory contend that the true effective rate is suppressed by a web of credits, offsets, and relocations, diverting profits from France's 25% corporate baseline via mechanisms like royalty payments for brand usage or low-interest loans between subsidiaries. It's comparable to a planetary-scale illusion, with capital darting across frontiers quicker than seasonal fashion cycles, all while LVMH leans on France's renowned craftsmanship, design schools, and luxury branding to fuel its dominance, yet contributing less to the national pot than the scale of its operations might imply. Arnault's individual windfalls from legislative shifts underscore his sway in policy arenas. In 2017, Emmanuel Macron, whom Arnault had publicly endorsed and financially supported during his ascent to the presidency, swiftly dismantled the Solidarity Wealth Tax, ISF, a levy that annually tapped assets over 1.3 million euros, covering everything from stock portfolios and vacation homes to art collections and jewelry. Arnault had been a vocal detractor, branding it a stifler of entrepreneurship and capital inflows. The ISF's substitution with a slimmer tax confined to real estate spared Arnault millions personally, with forecasts indicating annual savings in the tens of millions of euros, funds that could be redirected toward aggressive expansions like acquiring Tiffany Co. or bolstering digital ventures. Macron framed the change as a catalyst for business vitality, designed to keep fortunes domestic and ignite job creation, but critics perceived it as a tailored reward for influential backers, like Arnault, further entrenching divides between the opulent few and the broader society reliant on public services. Subsequent evaluations reveal scant evidence of the promised economic surge, instead showing amplified enrichment for the top tier, given that the ISF had previously funneled 5 billion euros yearly into government revenues for education, infrastructure, and welfare. At the heart of Arnault's succession blueprint lies the Agache reorganization, his core family holding company. This architecture funnels riches through Belgian trusts, cleverly trimming prospective inheritance taxes to a fraction of what they might otherwise be. In the event of Arnault's eventual passing, a horizon still distant at age 76, his descendants could stare down a monumental 10 to 15 billion euro obligation under France's graduated estate taxes, which escalate to 45% on inheritances ballooning beyond 200 billion euros. Redirecting through Belgium, however, caps rates at a modest 3 to 7% for direct kin, yielding enormous preservation. The 2022 overhaul recast Agache as a joint stock partnership or commandite, endowing Arnault with overriding veto powers while cementing governance for his 5 offspring, guaranteeing LVMH's familial oversight endures through heirs. Belgian trusts enhance this with heightened privacy and maneuverability, morphing what could be ruinous fiscal blows into tolerable outlays. Beyond the numbers, it's dynasty engineering, harnessing border-spanning instruments to bypass France's more punitive framework and perpetuate control over a conglomerate valued in the hundreds of billions. Such tactics deepen France's entrenched inequalities, sketching a portrait of a lopsided apparatus tilted toward the summit. Arnault and LVMH harvest generous state aid, encompassing export subsidies that propel brands onto world stages, research and development credits for innovative fabrics or sustainable practices, guarantees for international deals via entities like BPI France, and grants preserving cultural icons like historic chateaus or artisan workshops, tallying over €1 billion in yearly tax perks for LVMH. These infusions, aimed at upholding employment, LVMH employs over 200,000 globally, many in France, and bolstering the nation's soft power through fashion, weeks, and tourism, stem from communal purses funded by all taxpayers. Conversely, Arnault's methodologies yield an effective tax rate dipping below 25%, undercutting the 33% norm for mid-sized firms or salaried workers, and siphoning billions offshore, thereby offloading costs onto the masses via hiked VAT on essentials, steeper income brackets for the middle class, or slashed funding for hospitals and schools. Pundits dub this parasitism on collective assets. The upper crust reaps from taxpayer-built highways for logistics, educated talent from public universities, and consumer markets nurtured by social stability, yet reciprocates less relative to their gains. In a land where inequities spark uprisings like the Yellow Vests movement, with gilets jaunes blocking roundabouts to protest fuel taxes and living costs, this dynamic fosters profound bitterness, inviting scrutiny of whether luxury behemoths like LVMH are cherished emblems of French excellence or subtle siphons on societal resources. Family structure and the succession war, echoing HBO's drama. The Arnault family's intricate structure evokes the tense dynamics of succession, where patriarch Logan Roy convenes his offspring at the corporate epicenter for psychological maneuvering and loyalty tests. In a similar vein, Bernard Arnault organizes regular gatherings at LVMH's sophisticated Paris headquarters on Avenue Montaigne, an elegant address mere steps from the iconic Champs-Élysées Boulevard, symbolizing the pinnacle of French luxury and serving as the nerve center for a conglomerate that spans fashion houses, jewelry makers, and spirits distilleries. These are far from relaxed family outings. They are meticulously curated sessions, often held in opulent conference rooms, adorned with contemporary art from Bernard's personal collection, where the children interact with top executives like CFO Jean-Jacques Guillaume or brand CEOs, deliberate on strategic initiatives ranging from digital marketing campaigns to supply chain optimizations, and demonstrate their business prowess in a high-stakes environment that feels like a blend of boardroom negotiation and familial interrogation. Superficially, the atmosphere exudes solidarity, warm smiles exchanged over meticulously prepared espresso, insightful discussions on emerging market trends in Asia or sustainability practices, perhaps a celebratory sip of Dom Pérignon champagne from one of LVMH's own labels to toast a successful quarter. Beneath this veneer of harmony, however, lurk concealed rivalries that bubble like champagne under pressure, threatening to erupt at any moment as subtle glances, pointed questions, or competing ideas reveal underlying ambitions. Bernard, ever the astute observer with his sharp analytical mind, honed from decades of deal-making, leverages these assemblies to scrutinize his potential successors, assigning them roles of growing complexity akin to trials in an ancient royal succession ritual designed to separate the capable from the complacent. The philosophy is straightforward yet demanding. Begin with foundational tasks to grasp the basics of operations, such as understanding retail floor dynamics or product development cycles. Deliver measurable results to earn advancement through quantifiable metrics like revenue growth or market share gains, and continually prove one's mettle in the unforgiving arena of global luxury commerce, where a single misstep can cost millions in lost sales or reputational damage. This approach transcends merely selecting a CEO. It is about fortifying the empire against fragmentation, drawing lessons from the downfall of other storied family enterprises in the luxury domain that succumbed to internal discord, such as bitter inheritance battles or ego-driven splits that led to diminished brand value and vulnerability to external takeovers. A pivotal element in this framework emerged in 2022 with the comprehensive overhaul of Agache, the Arnault family's holding company that serves as the impregnable stronghold overseeing their substantial ownership in LVMH, commanding more than 48% of the capital and 64% of the voting rights, ensuring ironclad control over board decisions and strategic directions that affect everything from acquisitions to dividend policies. Bernard reconfigured Agache into a commandite, a specialized French partnership model rooted in civil law traditions that allocates equal stakes to each of his 5 children, Delphine, Antoine, Alexandre, Frédéric, and Jean, eliminating any overt favoritism on the surface and promoting a sense of parity that theoretically levels the playing field among siblings with diverse backgrounds and strengths. Yet, embedded safeguards heighten the intrigue. A stringent 30-year ban on disposing of any shares without unanimous agreement from all siblings, meaning every potential sale or transfer requires complete accord, or it simply cannot proceed, effectively tying their financial fates together for decades and discouraging impulsive actions that could dilute family influence. Furthermore, Bernard retains absolute veto power until he reaches the age of 95, empowering him to override any decision that jeopardizes the family's vision, such as risky investments or premature divestitures, until as late as 2044, providing a long-term safety net that allows him to guide from afar even in retirement. This architecture is a brilliant tactic to foster unity, binding the siblings in a collective guardianship of the legacy, much like a tightly knit alliance in a geopolitical strategy, compelling collaboration to preserve their shared inheritance and maintain LVMH's dominance in a competitive landscape filled with challengers like Hermes or Chanel. Nevertheless, it ignites fierce competition, with trillions potentially at stake in the long term, given LVMH's market capitalization exceeding 350 billion euros billion. Each accomplishment or misstep becomes a veiled thrust in the battle for prominence. Who is most effectively captivating their father's approval through innovative ideas or solid execution? Who is securing the most impactful victories, such as turning around a lagging division or landing a high-profile partnership? The parallels to succession are striking, where the Roy children maneuver relentlessly for their father's elusive endorsement amid corporate intrigue. But in the Arnault realm, the stakes involve tangible billions, the stewardship of a real-world empire, employing over 200,000 people globally, and the preservation of brands that define luxury for generations. These underlying tensions are far from speculative. They manifest in reported clashes, particularly between Delphine and Antoine from Bernard's first marriage and the younger siblings from his second, creating a generational divide that adds layers of complexity to family dynamics. Delphine, the eldest at 50 years old, and Antoine at 47, were raised during the formative, turbulent phases of Bernard's ascent, exposed to the raw intensity of corporate takeovers, financial risks, and the high-stakes negotiations that built the foundation of LVMH from a merger of disparate entities into a unified giant. In contrast, the younger group, Alexandre at 32, Frédéric at 30, and Jean at 26, matured amid the conglomerate's prosperous zenith, benefiting from more structured mentorship, access to elite education at institutions like Stanford and MIT, and immersion in its expansive operations through tailored internships and projects. Whispers from insiders, including executives and close associates, suggest discord. The senior pair occasionally feeling eclipsed by the golden boys who receive more visible, glamorous assignments that garner media attention and internal praise, or the juniors advocating for innovative, tech-driven approaches like AI in design or blockchain, for authenticity tracking that conflict with established tradition-bound methods, emphasizing artisanal craftsmanship and heritage storytelling. While no open hostilities surface publicly, the family projects an image of unbreakable solidarity through carefully curated appearances at events like Paris Fashion Week or charity galas. Sources describe animated disputes during those headquarters sessions, where proposals are vigorously contested over detailed presentations. Temporary coalitions emerge based on shared interests like sustainability versus digital expansion, and personal pride takes hits from critical feedback or overridden suggestions. Bernard actively nurtures this competitive edge, subscribing to the belief that adversity forges excellence, much like sharpening steel against steel in a blacksmith's forge, encouraging debates that refine ideas and build resilience. However, this strategy carries inherent perils, potentially sowing seeds of division that could widen into chasms, especially as LVMH confronts formidable obstacles in 2025, a year marked by economic headwinds that test the family's resilience, from geopolitical tensions affecting supply chains to shifting consumer behaviors, demanding greater transparency and ethics. Delving into the nepotism dimension reveals a compelling layer of the narrative, as a recent 2025 analysis disclosed that 1/3 of LVMH's executive committee comprises family appointments, a statistic that underscores the dynasty's grip on the company's direction and sparks discussions about governance in publicly traded firms. This elite committee functions as the intellectual core, guiding an enterprise with annual sales exceeding 79 billion euros and influencing decisions across diverse sectors like fashion, perfumes, watches, and spirits, from budgeting for advertising campaigns to negotiating supplier contracts worldwide. Bernard's offspring occupy pivotal positions, despite criticisms that their external experience is somewhat constrained compared to seasoned outsiders from competitors like Kering or Richemont, fueling debates about merit versus lineage in an industry where creativity and global insight are paramount. Consider Jean, the youngest at 26. He commenced his journey in 2017 as an ordinary sales associate at a Louis Vuitton boutique in London, assisting everyday customers with high-end purchases to absorb the fundamentals of retail dynamics, client service nuances, and the psychology of luxury buying. This humble initiation was Bernard's deliberate method to instill humility and practical insight, ensuring he understood the ground-level operations before ascending. Today, Jean has ascended to Director of Marketing and Product Development for Louis Vuitton watches, where he pioneers integrations of technology and luxury, such as smart features and elegant timepieces that include health tracking or NFC payments, while emphasizing sustainable materials like recycled metals to appeal to eco-aware millennials. Detractors argue this rapid progression exemplifies privilege, the Arnault surname unlocking opportunities unavailable to non-relatives, potentially stifling influxes of diverse perspectives that could invigorate innovation through fresh cultural or technological inputs. Bernard counters such views emphatically, asserting that LVMH thrives as a family-centric operation where unwavering loyalty outweighs external credentials, as blood ties ensure alignment with long-term vision over short-term gains. This arrangement has attracted backlash, branding it a hub for Nepo babies, in an era when the luxury sector faces scrutiny for perpetuating elitism and exclusivity. With social media amplifying calls for more inclusive leadership, efforts to camouflage these internal pressures often involve cultural pursuits, such as joint piano performances that project the family as a symphony of accord and intellectual depth. Bernard, a devoted pianist, frequently indulges in masterpieces by composers like Chopin or Debussy, finding solace in their intricate melodies amid the chaos of running a multinational corporation. His wife, Hélène Mercier, an internationally renowned pianist who has graced stages with orchestras from Montreal to Moscow, spearheads these artistic endeavors, bringing professional rigor to family hobbies. The family has staged collaborative concerts. Imagine Bernard, Hélène, and Frédéric harmonizing on Mozart's Concerto for Three Pianos, their fingers dancing in flawless unison at prestigious locations like the Fondation Louis Vuitton, a striking Frank Gehry-designed venue that doubles as a cultural hub. Frédéric, himself a skilled pianist with a passion for music paralleling his business acumen, actively participates, transforming these events into rituals that strengthen emotional ties and provide a respite from corporate demands. Alexandre and Jean have occasionally joined, albeit with less prominence in the spotlight, contributing to arrangements that highlight collective talent. Such occasions frequently go viral on social platforms, portraying a refined, cohesive unit complete with beaming expressions, resounding ovations, and encore demands that humanize the family beyond their billionaire status. Nonetheless, these displays serve as an exquisite facade. Beneath the harmonious notes, the competitive undercurrents persist, with music acting as a temporary balm for ambitions that simmer during daytime strategy sessions. Bernard employs them strategically to cultivate intimacy, reinforcing the notion that familial solidarity underpins the empire's endurance, even as echoes of succession remind us that shared meals or melodies can conceal sharp ambitions and calculated maneuvers. Labor issues and social controversies, from exploitation to discrimination. Allegations beneath the veneer of glamour that defines LVMH's world-renowned brands. A series of labor issues and social controversies has cast a long shadow over Bernard Arnault's empire, revealing patterns of exploitation, favoritism, and cultural insensitivity that extend from factory floors to executive suites. One of the most intimate and revealing incidents emerged in 2024 with a lawsuit filed by Arnault's personal chef, Marc Aubry, who accused his employer of subjecting him to grueling work conditions exceeding 100 hours per week while preparing elaborate meals for the family. Aubry, a seasoned professional in high-end cuisine, detailed how he endured double shifts stretching from early dawn to late into the night, crafting sophisticated French dishes such as foie gras terrines and truffle-laden entrees, along with specialized diets tailored to Arnault's preferences, all amid the billionaire's frequent travels on private jets. The payment structure added a layer of contention. Aubrey's salary was channeled through Dior, a key LVMH brand, in what prosecutors described as an unlawful maneuver to reclassify the role as corporate rather than personal, potentially evading France's rigorous labor regulations on overtime or Social Security contributions, rules that typically limit the standard work week to 35 hours to protect employee well-being. Aubrey reported feeling utterly exhausted, undercompensated for the intensity of the demands, and subjected to what he termed dehumanizing treatment, including verbal abuse and a lack of vacation time over his 15 years of service. Arnault's representatives insisted the arrangement was entirely legitimate and managed by staff without his direct involvement, but the case proceeded to court, where Aubrey sought back pay for unpaid hours, damages for physical and mental health impacts like chronic fatigue and stress, and moral compensation for the overall indignity. Beyond a single employee's grievance, this episode illuminates a broader disparity: how those in Arnault's immediate orbit might face relentless pressures, contrasting sharply with his own life of unparalleled luxury, including seamless transitions between his opulent Paris residence and seasonal retreats. Critics seized on the story as emblematic of how the ultra-wealthy often treat personal staff as mere utilities, disposable in pursuit of convenience, particularly when Arnault's net worth hovered near $200 billion. Although the lawsuit concluded with a settlement in 2025, amid speculation of a payout around 500,000 euros, it ignited media scrutiny, including satirical cartoons depicting Arnault feasting lavishly while his workers suffered in silence, and prompted deeper discussions about exploitation at the highest echelons of society. This personal controversy is emblematic of wider labor challenges plaguing LVMH, particularly from offshoring production to Italy, where substandard factory conditions have provoked widespread condemnation and legal action. In June 2024, Milan prosecutors conducted raids on 17 workshops supplying Dior, uncovering dire circumstances in Chinese-owned facilities where predominantly migrant workers produced handbags retailing for thousands of euros. These laborers endured 15-hour shifts without adequate breaks, sleeping in concealed, overcrowded dorms above the production lines, with wages as low as €2 to €3 per hour, equating to roughly 53 euros for a bag that took 32 hours to assemble and sold for 2,780 euros. Electricity was rationed to cut costs, machinery operated without safety guards risking severe injuries like cuts or amputations, and basic hygiene was neglected, with reports of mold-covered walls, overflowing toilets, and a lack of ventilation that exposed workers to harmful fumes from glue guns, potentially causing respiratory illnesses. One raid even discovered child labor, with young workers toiling in these hazardous environments. Italian authorities classified the operations as caporalato, a criminal practice akin to modern slavery, where intermediaries exploit vulnerable, undocumented Chinese immigrants who remain silent due to fears of deportation or reprisals. LVMH maintained that regular audits were performed to ensure compliance, but prosecutors contended the company willfully overlooked violations to reduce expenses, prioritizing profit margins by contracting these low-cost suppliers while marketing the products with the prestigious Made in Italy label. In response, Dior contributed €2 million in 2025 to support victims of labor exploitation, funding initiatives like shelters for migrants and legal assistance programs. But the reputational fallout was significant. Activists organized boycotts, social media erupted with hashtags like Dior Sweatshop, and consumers shared stories of returning products in protest. This was not an isolated incident. Similar violations surfaced at suppliers for Armani and other luxury firms. But for LVMH, it underscored the pitfalls of offshoring to leverage Italy's artisanal reputation, which backfired when ethical lapses came to light. Workers recounted feeling like automated machines, meeting unattainable quotas that forced them to forgo meals or rest, all to sustain Arnault's vast enterprise. The irony is palpable. Glossy advertisements featuring celebrities with these handbags obscure the human suffering embedded in their creation, transforming symbols of status into emblems of inequity. These ground-level hardships extend upward into LVMH's corporate hierarchy, where favoritism prevails, allowing Arnault's descendants to secure prominent positions and erode merit-based advancement, thereby intensifying accusations of nepotism. A 2025 analysis highlighted that one-third of the executive committee consists of family appointments, including Arnault's children, Delphine as CEO of Dior, Alexandre overseeing Tiffany Co, and Moet Hennessy, Frédéric leading Tag Heuer before transitioning to Loro Piana, Antoine managing communications, and Jean directing product development for watches, all accelerated despite relatively limited external professional backgrounds. Delphine joined in 2000 and ascended to guide Dior to €10 billion in sales. But skeptics argue her trajectory was facilitated by familial influence rather than independent achievement. Alexandre's collaborations with Beyoncé at Tiffany enhanced brand visibility and revenue, yet questions linger whether such successes stem from innate talent or the advantages of his surname. Frédéric elevated Tag Heuer from €500 million to €1.76 billion in revenue, but commencing as head of connected watches at age 22 prompts scrutiny. Opportunities of that caliber typically require years of unrelated experience for non-family members. Antoine revitalized Berluti into a profitable venture through innovative artisanal shoes, while Jean, at 26 and fresh from MIT, innovates in watches with eco-materials and smart features. Insiders note that this preference undermines diversity, as external hires could introduce novel ideas and perspectives, but loyalty to bloodlines overrides all, cultivating a Nepo baby atmosphere in an organization that publicly champions excellence and inclusion. This dynamic amplifies elitism, with the agache holding structure securing family dominance for generations, rendering LVMH more akin to a hereditary domain than an equitable workplace, and generating resentment among employees who witness promotions bypassed in favor of relatives. The controversies take a political turn as well, with allegations that Arnault supports Zionist organizations and contributes to anti-Muslim prejudice in France through his donations and affiliations. Reports connect him to entities like the European Jewish Congress or Friends of Israel, channeling millions during France's contentious debates on Middle East policies. Critics contend this exacerbates Islamophobia, particularly given his close ties to Emmanuel Macron. Arnault provided financial support and public endorsements for Macron's 2017 presidential campaign, aligning with the leader's pro-Israel positions, such as swift condemnations of Hamas while delaying calls for Gaza ceasefires. In a France where Muslim communities endure systemic challenges, including bans on hijabs in schools and closures of mosques under security pretexts. Arnault's silence on these matters, contrasted with his funding for Jewish causes, creates an impression of bias. Further, LVMH's political action committees have directed donations to conservative candidates advocating anti-immigration measures, leading to accusations that his vast wealth sways policies benefiting elites at the expense of minorities. While not overt discrimination, the overall optics portray Arnault as complicit in a divisive system within a country home to 5 million Muslims who often feel marginalized, reinforcing perceptions of him as a detached magnate oblivious to societal rifts. In 2025, Moet Hennessy became embroiled in sexual harassment allegations, with a former executive filing a €1.3 million lawsuit over a deeply toxic workplace culture. Maria Gasparovich, who served as chief of staff, alleged that superiors suggested she undergo anti-seduction training because her attractiveness was deemed a barrier to promotions, subjecting her to sexist comments like gagging for it, and bullying that culminated in her termination after she reported misconduct. At least 4 other women departed for comparable reasons, citing groping at company events, lewd emails, and coercion for after-hours meetings that blurred professional boundaries. The Paris headquarters was characterized as a boys' club, where male leaders dismissed complaints, instilling a fear of retaliation that silenced victims. Moet Hennessy denied the claims, but the lawsuit unveiled entrenched cultural problems exacerbated by LVMH's downturn, as layoffs and pressures intensified toxicity, with stressed executives lashing out to meet quotas. Gasparovich's case, lodged in July 2025, pursued damages for discrimination, underscoring how the allure of luxury conceals harsh realities for women aspiring to leadership roles. These cultural deficiencies gained prominence during LVMH's substantial financial downturn, resulting in $54 billion in losses from 2024 to mid-2025, primarily attributed to China's economic slowdown. The luxury market in China collapsed due to post-COVID consumer fatigue, a property crisis, and youth unemployment, drastically reducing expenditures on items like Vuitton bags and Dior dresses. Sales in Asia, excluding Japan, fell 14% in Q2 2024 and 16% in Q3, erasing €20 billion from Arnault's fortune. By the first half of 2025, revenues declined 4% to €39.8 billion. Profits dropped 22% to €9 billion. Fashion and leather goods decreased 9 to 12%, watches and jewelry by 5%, and wines and spirits by 8% due to tariffs and oversupply. Anonymous leaks on platforms like Glassdoor exposed toxic environments, including burnout from relentless demands, favoritism breeding discontent, and unchecked harassment during cost-cutting measures, such as 13% workforce reductions at Moet and factory closures in Italy. The cultural rot was evident in neglected diversity initiatives with predominantly white male leadership despite a global workforce, and scandals like supplier exploitation demanding reforms. The slump compelled some self-examination, but skeptics viewed it as superficial, while executives retained privileges. On a contrasting note, Arnault's philanthropic efforts, such as the €210 million donation for Notre Dame's restoration in 2019, following the fire, covering the spire, and interiors, or €10 million for food assistance in 2023 to Restos du Cœur, aiding 1.5 million French citizens amid inflation, are frequently criticized as mere publicity maneuvers. The Notre Dame contribution, part of an €850 million collective pledge, received acclaim but drew ire for tax incentives. French regulations permit 60% deductions, effectively reducing Arnault's outlay while enhancing his heroic image. Left-leaning voices labeled it crumbs from his €200 billion wealth, amounting to less than 0.1%, particularly as LVMH evaded higher taxation. The 2023 food aid arrived when Restos du Cœur teetered on closure, but figures like Jean-Luc Mélenchon derided it as peanuts for a billionaire, prioritizing public relations over substantive impact and time to bolster LVMH's reputation. Cumulatively, under €300 million across years, these gestures pale beside his extravagance, reinforcing perceptions of stinginess. This disparity, exemplified by yachts like the €150 million Symphony, a 101-meter floating palace equipped with a helipad, gym, and cinema, or jets such as the Bombardier Global 7500, costing €70 million for trips to estates in Saint-Tropez or the Alps, versus the chef's complaints of overwork for a €5,000 monthly salary, intensifies views of elitism amid France's inequality crisis. The country's Gini coefficient stands at 0.29, but wealth disparities are expanding, with the top 1% controlling 25% of assets, while 20% live in poverty. Arnault's annual €1 million chef budget, juxtaposed with lawsuits over excessive hours, symbolizes indifference. His portfolio of multiple residences and art collections worth billions stands in stark relief to struggling employees. Movements like the Yellow Vests have channeled rage at elites evading taxes while public services suffer cuts. Arnault's endorsement of Macron, who abolished the wealth tax saving him millions annually, deepens this resentment. He is perceived as the archetype of a system where luxury prospers through exploitation, disregarding the chef laboring endlessly or factory workers in dire conditions. In 2025, as LVMH grapples with losses, demands for equitable pay have escalated. Yet Arnault's defenses remain firm, prompting France to ponder whether such immense wealth fosters empathy or merely widens the chasm. The Arnault family's narrative combines business brilliance with moral ambiguities, where triumphs arise from calculated purchases, political clout, and family reinforcement, but at the expense of openness and fairness. These disclosures highlight larger problems such as wealth gaps, business impact on governance, and the vulnerability of family conglomerates in luxury. As Arnault manages 2025 setbacks and inheritance uncertainties, his heritage serves as a warning about the dual nature of authority, based on confirmed legal documents, inquiries, and financial reviews.